You're listening to the Public Health Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode. On this podcast, we explore topics of interest for professionals at the intersection of public health and entrepreneurship. My name is Dr. Charlotte Huntley, and I'm really happy that you've decided to join me on this episode. I am a public health entrepreneur, and I have over 25 years of experience in healthcare and in public health, and I've supported many entrepreneurs along the way. At the time of this recording, the 2024 presidential election just ended in the United States. And I know that many of you listen to this podcast from different countries, but the majority of you live here in the United States. It was a very close race, and everyone is feeling a lot of mixed emotions. I say a mixed bag of emotions right now, just trying to process the next steps. And I think this is true regardless of how you voted. I don't pretend to think that everyone voted exactly the same way that I voted, but I do know that across the board, people are feeling some emotions. So on this episode, I really want to share just a few things to consider, especially for public health entrepreneurs. Now, I shared this message, similar message on my other podcast, the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. So if you follow that podcast, this episode will be one day apart from like the one today, and the one on that episode on that podcast is like one day apart. Similar message, but I'm focused a little bit differently here because this audience, you're all entrepreneurs. So you have some sort of business, or you're thinking about it, or you're interested in it. So I will start by saying, a long time ago, I started the call to action for people that were interested in stepping into consulting, that this was the time to be consulting and that there's such a need. And I've said this a few years ago, and it still holds true. If you're thinking about it and you haven't actually started, and for whatever reason, maybe, holding you back, a lot of times it's rooted in some sort of fear of getting started, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of, all the hesitations, the anxiety around it. I won't go into all the reasons that may be holding you back, but I will encourage you that the best time to start consulting was a few years ago. The next best time is right now. There's such a need. There's an opportunity. There will be opportunities. Now, I don't have any exact anything going into the future, but I do know that across my years of consulting that, and just even in this, generally in this entrepreneurial vein, because I do more than consulting, that there's a need. There's a need for what you have. There's a need for how you show up. And there's opportunity to partner with organizations that frankly are somewhat restricted in what they can say or how they can act, but you aren't restricted because you are leading in your business and you set the rules. And sometimes they like to partner with people like you because of that. It makes a very strong partnership. So keep your antenna up and stay alert for those opportunities to partner with these organizations and these opportunities. With that in mind, I will say that it's important to be mindful. Not to confuse mindfulness with being weak or not being vibrant or not, being passionate. That's not what I'm suggesting. Mindfulness is just being mindful of the fact that there's half of the country that was celebrating that day and half of the country that was sad and distraught that day, talking about when the election results came in. As whatever you decide to do and however you proceed, just be mindful of, you don't have to cater to someone else's emotions. But as we build and show up and lead these new relationships and these new opportunities, and we build these new connections, we need to be mindful of how we show up, how other people in the room are interpreting us and feeling. Well, I guess we can't control how they feel. That's not what I'm even suggesting. But I'm just saying, practice mindfulness. I will let you decide what that means for you instead of trying to over-explain it. I just think it's important that we're mindful. We can never go wrong if we practice being mindful. We can, like I said, decide what that means for us, but I'm encouraging all of us to, everything that we do, be mindful. Okay, so as entrepreneurs, there are 3 things that I would really like for you to do. I want you to rest. My goodness, just even saying that gives me the need to pause for a moment. We need to rest. You define what rest means for you and what that looks like for you, because it does look different from person to person, organization to organization. I needed to rest. I gave my entire team an extra day, and the request was that you do nothing. It wasn't a day to run around and do errands or do doctor's appointments. I gave them the day a couple of days after the election. I said, let's wrap up everything that we need to do and let's just unplug for a full day and just rest. And I had them check in with me later to let me know how they decided to rest on that day, just as an accountability. So it's important to rest. Before we can do anything else, we've got to rest. We've got to rest. Once we rest, we're able to then, the next thing for you to do is reflect. Reflect historically over what, maybe it's what's worked for you in the past, what you've accomplished so far, what failed, what didn't work, what's working now. And even think about past elections, previous administrations, presidential administrations, think leadership, think about qualities, think about the communities that you serve, what's worked, what are their needs, what might this look like? Just reflect over what historically has happened, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And it's important that you rest first and then move into this reflection. So as an entrepreneur, you may have a very short window to reflect over in terms of maybe you've only been in business for a couple of years or a year, but you can reflect in the context of your business and then maybe extend it back a little bit before you started the business. There's a lot that we can pull from historical reflection. And I did this myself by going back to my hometown recently, visited with family. I visited my mother's grave. My mother passed away a year ago, and it was my first time visiting her grave. And all of our family that has, gone on before me, they're buried right there together. And I really had a chance to reflect over their stories, the things that they accomplished, how they suffered in a lot of cases. And I found that in my time of rest and reflecting, it led to next steps for me, and a rising up of some energy and action of how we are going to move forward as a business and what the kind of energy that's how I'm going to show up, moving forward, not just in the business, but professionally, individually for myself. So once you rest, you have an opportunity to reflect. The third thing is to reset. We can't stay in our feelings the way we are now. And it may take a little while for you to rest and reflect and process everything. Do what you need to do. But when the time comes, you'll need to reset so that we can move forward, because there is much work that needs to be done. It's interesting because I recently gave a keynote speech just a few days before the election to the Black Caucus of Health Workers, the awards gala. And in that speech, I even said to everyone, all the leaders in that room, that regardless of the outcome of the election, we have a lot of work to do. So fast forward to where we are today, we're post-election time. We have the outcome. We have the results. And now we know that we have a lot of work to do. So my friends, I want you to rest, reflect, and reset. We have a lot of work to do. Before we go, I'd like to also remind you about our mastermind group program, because if you are a consultant, entrepreneur, this is a great community to get the support you need for the work that we have to do moving forward, to be with that community that can support you and that you can also provide support to. We have our virtual meetings and we have our in-person retreats twice a year. So this may be something for you to, if you've been thinking about it, it may be something for you to prioritize. Now, at the time of this recording, we are about to open enrollment for this next round. So I don't know if you'll be able to come in for the immediate group that we're enrolling for, or if it will be in June. We only open enrollment twice a year. It's June and the very beginning of December. But at any rate, go to publichealthentrepreneurs.com and explore the details for yourself. And if you're interested, then please submit an application. But continue to listen to this podcast and be fed and fueled and inspired by the messages that are coming in the episodes that flow from here. Certainly go back to any that you have missed in the past, but there are more coming your way that will support you for the journey that we're on. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening. Visit publichealthentrepreneurs.com to learn more.